Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Folks, my guest today, Shelly Zalis, is the CEO of the Female Quotient. She is an internationally renowned thought leader, movement maker, and champion of equality. Shelly is a pioneer for online research, becoming the first female chief executive ranked in the research industry's top 25. Today, as CEO of the Female Quotient, Shelly works with Fortune 500 companies and impact organizations to advance the equality and equity in the workplace. Through its signature pop-up experience, the Equality Lounge, along with global exchange and advisory services, the Female Quotient has created an international community of women rising up to catalyze change. And as a firm believer in giving back with generosity, Shelly is a proud mentor to women around the world. So let's get to it without further ado. Shelly Zalis, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, so excited to be here. That was a great introduction. Although you forgot to say that my nickname is Chief Troublemaker. So there you have it.
Chief Troublemaker. Then I will be the senior director of trouble because I have not been promoted yet up through the executive ranks. But I'm on my way. I have lots of mentors, and maybe I'll have a new one after this show here, Shelly. So let's get to it right here. You grew up as one of 4 girls in your family, right?
Yep, number 2.
Tell us a little. Number 2. So you were number 2. Okay, got it. And the middle children are always, that's the toughest ones there. So tell us a little bit about growing up. And I always like to ask, what did you want to do when you were a kid?
You're not going to believe this one, but growing up as one of 4 girls is pretty remarkable because you'd think being one of 4 girls, I'd be competitive with my sisters, and quite the opposite. We're all the greatest of friends. And my parents did something so right because we're all so similar and yet so incredibly different. Actually, they wrote an article in a magazine about me and my baby sister, Rachel. So I just turned 60 and my baby sister, Rachel, is probably 53. And the article, she's single and amazing, drop dead gorgeous. And the article was, we are so similar and yet so different. And it was just so true. And the article was great. It said, I was in the movie business at the time, and she was also on television. And they said, I am going to bed at 10 p.m. and she's just doing a wardrobe change at 10 p.m. And I wear couture clothing to my knee, and she wears trendy clothing above her, way above her knee. And she is, it was just the compare and contrast. And it was just such a great article. And we all just love each other so much. And I think my parents really brought us up all about this collaboration, how we all shared everything. And it was just this remarkable family life of love and really the value add that we all had. We traveled as a family together. We chased total solar eclipses. And my parents taught us about experience. And go ahead.
No, I was about to say, your parents like old hippies?
No, it was just about living life with experiences and sharing everything with one another. We never fought. I don't remember fighting with my sisters. My older sister is 14 months older than I am. And we shared a bedroom together, and we shared clothes. We shared not boyfriends at the same time, but if the guy wasn't right for her, he probably was right for me. And it just was an amazing childhood. And It's the same thing today, with girlfriends in my life and, women. I just always say we're better together. And I just love the values that my parents instilled in us. And I think it was about traveling as a family together. And even today, my sisters were all such great friends, and all of my kids and their cousins, we do so much together. So growing up was just an amazing experience.
Sisterhood, togetherness. But do you recall like your first kind of notion of your head of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
So this is
like, I knew I wanted to be an architect, and I never turned out to be an architect.
I wanted to be a flight attendant. So now I'm a 3 million miler on pretty much every airline. Right. I know when flight attendants get their hair cut. I'm like, oh, nice haircut. So I probably fly more than pilots and more than flight attendants, but I love the world. And, not so much about sightseeing, even though I do love seeing the world, but I love culture and knowing people and what makes them tick and their values and community and just understanding all aspects of the world. And that's probably why I was in market research, just understanding all the different aspects of culture and ethnography and things like that. So I wanted to be a flight attendant. Now I get to fly all over the world.
I love it. That's fantastic. And before I get to the next segment of your incredible story here, I need to ask you about that WWF belt behind you, that wrestling belt. Is there a story behind that?
So this is my title belt.
I mean, I have to ask.
This is my WWE title belt, and it has my name.
I mean, come on.
And then
it's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
My chief troublemaker. This is
from
my dear girlfriend, Steph McMahon, the chief brand officer, Vince McMahon's daughter.
She's a legend. That family's a legend. I grew up with.
She's amazing.
And she has a great story too. She's a great story too.
This belt was given to me because Steph says it's my favorite story that the female wrestlers used to have a title belt half the size of the men. They were little belts with butterflies on them. And why should they have belts half the size of the men when they are such badass wrestlers? And so, of course, we got the belts the same size of the men. And so that's my champion title belt.
I love it. And Steph is a complete boss. She's on my list. We'll pause it for now. She's on my top 10 list of future guests that I'd love to have on the show. But pause on that one for a moment. And let's talk about, first jobs out of school. We all have these stories, right? Like I was 23, 24, trying to live in New York City, making $26,000 a year. My rent was $1,200 a month. Do the math on that. And you can think how fast I got into debt. But your story is a little bit different. The same thing, making, $24,000 a year, but your boss was making a lot more. And that's when you're like, wait a minute, the red flag went up there. Tell us about that.
It's so funny. So my first job was working for a man named Dave Videra, actually Baldev Videra. And he was actually the greatest inspiration and role model for me. I just adored him. I wanted a job. I thought I was getting a job in an ad agency, and I was at Columbia University, and I went and found a job on a bulletin board, and it said creative agency. And I really did think it was an ad agency. And so I pulled it and I went to this job. I was in a suit and everything. And I show up and it's a 5-story building, brownstone. And I walk in, there's 3 women and they were great, fun women all sitting around having lunch, eating frozen yogurt. And I'm like, oh, this is a perfect job. And they're all gossiping about, movies and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I could do this. This is perfect. And I walk in, we sit and we're like, chatting. And I sit around and I'm talking with them, and all of a sudden the boss comes in. He's wearing Wallaby shoes. Do you know what those are? You're too young. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, they're like
no. It sounds like something Australian. Are they Australian?
They're kind of goofy shoes, red socks, corduroy brown pants, button-down shirt, kind of messy looking, and just so informal. And we just started talking about ads and breaking it down, and he showed us some commercials, and it was just such a great place to work. And so, of course, I accepted the job and, $23,000 a year. And it was the best job in the whole, and I ended up working for him for 7 years. And the way we did business was every day we would sit around in a circle and just talk about ads. And we had this brilliant idea jar. And whenever we had an idea, we'd write it on a piece of paper, stick it in the jar. And at night, probably 8:00 at night, I mean, there was no 9 to 5 job at that time. We worked until midnight, but it was so fun. And we would pull out these brilliant ideas, talk about them, and then make it happen. Boom. You had a good idea. We'd make it happen. Old school. And I'd sit at a typewriter. We would type things. And that's how we worked. This is a really long time ago. And it was the best job in the whole world. And I would meet the CEO, the CMO, there was no title. And I got to meet the most senior level executives and sit at the table, and whatever I said happened. And it didn't even matter how much money I made. I was the boss. We all were bosses. Title was irrelevant. So I really didn't care. And who knew how much he was? I think we were like a $10 million company. There was only 5 of us working, and we were all making $23,000 a year, and he was making the difference.
Do the math.
There was no overhead.
Do the math.
So there you go. Until this day, 212-689-0207. That was the phone number of the company. And we had rotary phones, I think, at the time. And I still remember that phone number because he was such a mentor to me, because he taught me so many important things about business, client relationships, because he was genius. And I didn't care how much money I made because he taught me so many valuable lessons in life.
Yeah, and those core pieces are so foundational to them. And I worked in advertising and marketing and media. And I always say those first jobs out of school were the most critical because it taught me client relationships, the importance of them, how to manage expectations, and how to underpromise and overdeliver. Which I think are not being taught as much as they should be in this modern world that we're living in. And I think a lot of the young folks out there are kind of losing out on those foundational elements. What do you do from a mentorship perspective yourself when you have young ladies and young men that work for you? How do you instill those values in them and those old school traditional foundational elements?
I mean, the first thing that Dave taught me was the importance of simplicity. I mean, it was just so simple. Things weren't over-engineered. The second was the importance of relationships. Our clients were so connected to us. You pick up the phone, everything was yes. Client wanted something, it was yes. We just, if the client wanted to deviate from how we did something, the client's always right. We just said yes and we got it done. It was just not a big deal. Nothing was a big deal. We just said yes and we got it done and
figured it out.
And our business grew as a result of that. Our clients loved us. We never lost any business. The third thing was he was available. We were in this little office and you wanted to get something done. You walked in his office. There was no big office and formality. You said, hey, Dave, how about this? The other thing is we had a brilliant idea jar. We all were brilliant. And every idea we sat around, we talked about it and boom, things happened. And no matter what, we were all equal. And it's even today, I hate titles. There was no title. We all made shit happen. And it was amazing.
Happen.
The other thing that really was amazing, and this was crazy, in the Wall Street Journal. So I was in the survey business. I thought I was going to an ad agency. I was actually in market research. And we did paper surveys. It was mall intercept. So we would go to the mall and ask consumers questions. What was your favorite commercials? What did you like about commercials? What didn't you like? It was just so basic. And yet we were a big market research company, yet we were so tiny. And at the end of every survey, we would just say, what was your favorite commercial? That was the question. And consumers would tell us, open-ended, and they would tell us their favorite commercial. From that one question in the Wall Street Journal, we had a column that would say what favorite commercial it was. We had this huge column in the Wall Street Journal from that one question we tagged on for free to the end of every survey. And Ron Alsop would write this column from video
Based on
storyboards,
that.
your favorite commercial, and we became this huge research company, video storyboard tests, a video little storyboard company, because of this one little free thing we would write. So
That's
simple.
crazy.
And yet Wall Street Journal had a big column on us. That was that.
And that just goes to show you, you plant these little seeds, these little ideas, and they grow into big things. But I want to pause for a second here, and I want to kind of talk about, when you first kind of realized of the gender inequality. Was it early on in your career, like in those early jobs when you said, wait, why am I only making this when male counterparts are making that? When did that light bulb go off?
I never thought about that. First of all, I worked with all women in the business with Dave, and he treated us so wonderfully. And I never even thought about how much money I made and how much money he made. And I loved my job, and he was amazing. So I never thought about that. And I didn't think about that until much later in life, in terms of pay equity. I then got to my next job, where it was a much bigger company. And I was, of course, a very senior level executive, one of few women working for a lot of male bosses. And my first review, big review, because Dave never reviewed me. That was nothing. Then I got to a bigger company, and I was, rising the ranks. I go to my first formal review, and now things started happening. And
before we get to that review, Shelly, let's pause it. Let's pause there for a second because I'm going to get to that in a second. But I want everyone to understand the impact that Shelly had on the digital marketing world as a pioneer, really pioneering split screen banner, interstitial ads. I mean, literally, this was day one. You're an OG homie at this stuff, and that's incredible. I mean, my roots are in digital marketing. When you think about the first ads that came out, were they intrusive? How did people think about them? I'd love a little kind of brief history, if you don't mind, for my marketing audience out there on the first digital ads.
Okay, well, I didn't get to that yet, so I'm still in traditional mall intercept paper pencil surveys. So
real old school surveys.
So I'm in old school surveys to start. So when I'm with video storyboards, we were doing storyboard testing, which was literally cutting ads and doing storyboard testing. That was David Era video storyboard testing. This was in 1980. Oh God, 87. I'm an old lady. This is a long time ago. We went into malls and we were doing paper pencil with little old ladies asking you things
manual,
and using
analog.
Paper pencil, writing the answers down, taking their erasers and erasing the answers. So that was then. Then I went to ASI, which was still phone intercept, where we were actually then doing phone intercept and calling people on telephone in their homes doing surveys. So at ASI, we were doing phone intercept. So
we could see the progression.
That was
here.
my second
let's
job.
Go back. So let's get back to the story, which I abruptly cut you off on. So you were in this role and it was time for this performance review. What happened there?
So I then went from video storyboard, mall intercept to ASI, which was quantitative. And that's quantitative research, where we did phone intercept research. And it was where it was sort of on, this is now a whole, I remember going to David Dara saying, I just got recruited to go to ASI. It's time for me to fly the coop. Are you okay with this? I need to grow my career. What is quantitative research? I went and asked him. I said, you need to let me fly. It's time for me to go. And he said, I don't want you to go, but you're right. It's time for you to grow your career. I said, so help me prep for this interview. I'm a little nervous about it. And he was like a father to me, and he encouraged me to go. And I go for this big interview, and I'm very nervous about it. And of course, I get the job, and I'm now taking a big leap. I go from a $23,000 job to $110,000 job.
It's a big jump.
A big jump.
And responsibility level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm pretty excited about it. And my first review comes, and I have a male boss, a male boss, a male boss, a male boss, a male boss. And I think I'm like the golden child. I'm a team player. I say
Can't do
yes to
wrong.
everybody. And, I come in early and I stay late. But I kind of push the envelope because I'm so used to being at a small little company where I say yes to everybody. And, I listen to clients and I'm always proactive and I'm breaking all the rules. And I'm such an innovative kind of personality. And I come in and of course I get this 10-page typewritten review, and my boss sits me down and he says, 5 nice things about me. I'm smart and I'm a team player and, all this kind of stuff. And then he goes and rips me to shreds. I push people out of their comfort zone. I say yes to clients too often. I take clients to lunch, all the time.
Oh,
and,
how dare you?
And that I spend too much time with clients and all this kind of stuff. And I have 2 options. One, agree with him and sign the review that I agree, or do what Dave Videra trained me to do, which was look at him and do what I did and say, you know what? You are so terribly wrong. And you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Now, I'm still a young executive, but he was wrong. I'm trained to be a relationship girl and to say yes to everyone and to push the barriers and to break the rules. And from that moment on, I realized that I am not going to follow the rules that make no sense. And I am about relationships, and I'm not going to be an order taker and sit at a desk. And that's just not who I am. And I realized from that moment forward, I would rather be in charge and I need to write my own rules. And that at some point, I'm going to need to create my own company and create the uncorporate rules and run my own show if I'm going to thrive in business. And I need to have my own company. And
I love the epiphany story. Love it.
And that was and I call them heartbeat moments. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom.
Yes.
You got to follow your heart. And I also at that point was married. I was going to have kids. And I knew that if I was going to raise a family, I was going to need to write my own rules so that I was no longer going to be the exception, but I could create the new norm and run my own show. And that was a big moment for me. And it was also at the time I started becoming a digital guru when the internet was, running, and I started creating consortiums of understanding that I wanted to move marketers into the internet. And when I started testing online advertising. So I didn't pioneer online research yet, but I started testing online ads. And I created the first consortium of advertisers to come together and to start pioneering different ad models. Now you could talk about the digital piece.
There we go. And I'll splice that back in with in post-production over there. So we have this storyline, right? The podcast is brought to you in partnership with Venturi, the recruitment operating system, the all-in-one tech platform purposely built for recruitment and staffing to unify your front, middle, and back office operations. Venturi is designed by recruiters for recruiters. Both the company and the platform are the unique creations of successful recruiters who sold their business, saw a need for a better recruitment tech, and made it happen. And if you're looking to upgrade your recruitment tech and give your recruiters a new modern operating system, visit venturi.io/podcast. That's VINCERE.io/POZCAST for an exclusive offer. Thanks. But it's interesting too, and correct me if I'm wrong on this. You there's a story where you needed a developer, right, to build this thing, and you promised this developer $1 million, and you had to go out and figure this out. Where were you going to get this from? I think that's a pretty cool story.
So we first started at ASI, where I had this idea to move marketers into testing ads before I pioneered online research. And so I created a consortium that was first called the CIA, the Consortium of Interactive Advertisers. And I brought 10 non-competitive advertisers together, and it was amazing. And we tested ads. And, that's when we created interstitials and split screens and banners, and I brought us all together, and I had everyone kick in different ads and ad units and ad sizes. And we created something that never existed before. And we created a whole database to test ad units. And I went around to all different websites. And the idea was, oh gosh, and we even started testing different websites because no one was doing that at the time. And I thought to myself, advertisers were creating 100-page websites just to test advertising. But I said, no one was creating programs for advertising. Why are we creating our 100-page websites? Let's create ad units to put our, I said, no one was creating programs for advertising. You create 30-second advertising. So we had to standardize ad units.
Right.
So I went around to all different websites. So we started creating different ad units. And then the second consortium was called IIX. Oh God, what was it? Anyways, so we started creating all different formats and all that kind of stuff. Then after that, I hired this guy that was a 21-year-old digital guru. And I said to him, I will give you $1 million if you create this platform for me. I didn't have the $1 million. And then I was the first to, and I went to my boss, still at ASI. Is this the story you want to hear now?
Yeah. I want to hear how you came up with that number, first of all.
So, okay, this is such a long story. So I decided that it was time to pioneer online research. And I knew that if I didn't have a platform to show anybody, nobody would really understand what I was talking about. And so this guy, Trevor Kaufman, who helped with all the interactive stuff that the interactive information exchange or interactive, what was IIX? Anyways, so I said to him, I will give you $1 million. I came up with a number because it sounded really good and it would entice him to
motivational.
Build it.
Right.
Yeah. I said, it just
it's a big number.
Really good. I said, I'll give you $1 million. Let's build it in my basement. And the one day that somebody wants to do it, I'll make you a millionaire. And so he agreed.
So
I went to my bosses.
He believed in you. He had faith in you. Yep.
Yeah. But he had nothing to lose. Right. And so I went to my bosses and I said, it's time to pioneer online research. And my bosses had told me that it wasn't the right time because there was no one online. And they said there's only wealthy men with broadband connections. And I said, but if we don't make it the right time, it's never going to be the right time. And so I went to a conference and I was sitting on the dais with the with the chief research officer of Procter & Gamble, Larry Mock. And I'm whispering to Larry Mock. And I come off the stage and my bosses all said, well, what were you talking to Larry about? I said, I just asked him, when is the right time to come into Procter & Gamble and talk to you about online research? And my bosses all said, well, what did Larry say? He said, come in next week. And I said, great. And my bosses said, terrific. Paul will go, John will go, Ringo will go, and Star will go. I said, but what about Shelly? And my bosses said, well, it's a boys club and this is the right group to go. I said, well, if I'm not going, I'm going to cancel the meeting and
it's
you can all wait for. And so, well, if I'm not going, you can all, I'm going to cancel the meeting. You can all wait for the right time. And so, of course, I went and lo and behold, it was the right time because I made it the right time. And after that, I left ASI. Ipsos had just acquired ASI. I left ASI, and that's when I started my own company. And of course, I made Trevor a millionaire. And
I love it. And didn't Nielsen end up funding it? Didn't Nielsen research? Didn't Nielsen end up?
So I went to Nielsen. Nielsen asked me what I wanted. I said I needed $1 million, not for myself, but for Trevor. Gave the money to Trevor. And that's how I started OTX.
And just a side note there, like, say what you mean what you say, keep your word and stick to it. And that's just the right way to do things. And it's the right way in life. Career karma, relationship karma, life karma. You take care of people and they take care of you. So let's talk about, starting your own company. What was it? Was there an early kind of, I don't want to say a misstep or a mistake, but was there a stumbling block where you learned a hard lesson the hard way going out on your own?
So many lessons. I mean, first of all, the $1 million I took from Nielsen, I gave away 80% of my company in exchange for that, which of course that money I had given to Trevor. And I have a no regret policy. I never look back and say shoulda, woulda, coulda. And, I think forward and live in the moment. And that has led me to wonderful things as a result of that. And, at the time, my husband and my father each wanted to give me $500,000 for that million instead of me taking it from Nielsen. And
right.
had I have taken that money from my father and from my husband, who today is a surgeon, at the time he was a fellow, we didn't have that money. And I knew if I had taken that money from my father and my husband, I never would have taken risks. I would have played it safe. And there was no one on the internet. I had to build the ecosystem. I was the first. And one of the things that I say today is you have to be the first, the second, and the third. The first is always the innovator. You have to take the risks. You have to make the mistakes. You got to trust your gut, and no one follows you, by the way. The second is always the copycat. It's always that person that will copy you, but they don't know what's under the hood. And the third is the sweeper. They ride in on that shiny white horse, and they
carpetbaggers.
And so, I always had to be the first, the second, and the third. And so I'm so happy that I didn't take my husband's money and my father's, because I never would have taken the risks and the chances that I took. And, I ended up selling my company for $80 million. I would have made $80 million, but I have zero regrets. I had such an amazing journey along the way, and I loved every step of it, with all my mistakes and all of the challenges I had. I love all the scars and all of the stories and all of the lessons that I've learned. And that's why I say I give back with generosity. I really can tell all of these stories, and I share them generously with everyone, because they're my stories to share and my stories to tell.
I love it. And thank you for sharing it. So let's take it to CES in 2013, where I realized there was less than 5% of female attendees. And you're like, something's rotten in Denmark. Something's not kosher here. 2013 CES, again, just all boys club there. Was that in Vegas?
Well, so first of all, when I created OTX, I've sold the same company 3 times to different owners, because I kept rebuilding, recreating, and strengthening, the concept, a number of times. And so that, there's a million stories along the way, which is, chapter 1, 2, and 3, we can talk about on different shows. After I sold the company the 3rd time to Ipsos, which is the craziest story, because as I told you, I started at Video Storyboards, then I went to ASI, then ASI got acquired by Ipsos when I left. I then sold my company. I went to Nielsen. Then I sold my company to Strauss-Zelnick and Bob Pittman. And then I sold my company to Ipsos, which had originally acquired ASI, which is full circle.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I was reading the story correctly through the research, there was one phase somewhere in this sales cycle where one of the companies was moving into, correct me if I'm wrong, the adult film or something that you didn't want to put your name behind.
Yeah.
They wanted to use the technology for adult reasons. Yeah.
So when I went to Nielsen, after Nielsen, I went to iFilm. So when I went to iFilm was so ahead of itself. So I left Nielsen. I started my business again at iFilm. iFilm was what YouTube is today, but it was so ahead of itself. So I built a whole new online research company and pioneered it for the movie business. And it was so ahead of itself. And it was owned by Kevin Wendell and Skip Paul, and built a big research company, the online research business there. And I ended up supporting iFilm at the time. And then I left when iFilm was so successful, but it was ahead of YouTube. And then they started thinking about going into pornography. But I had clients like Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola and, everyone.
It didn't align with your brand.
Yeah. And at that time we were enormous. And I thought, you know what, this is the right time to go. And that's when I sold to Strauss-Zelnick and Bob Pittman. I've had so many iterations in life.
Total legend.
Yeah.
Total legend. So let's shift gears and talk about the origin story of the female quotient and how, correct me if I'm wrong, it's an improved version of the Girls Club, and talk us through that journey. I think it's really important to share.
So then I sold my company to Ipsos, and so that we could go global, and that was really amazing. And so that happened, and then I decided it was time to get back with generosity. What I wish I had rising the ranks, and I wanted to go to CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. Heard there was 150,000 people that go. Less than 5%, actually 3% were women. And, being an only and lonely is hard when you go to these big conferences. There's no women there. And, it's hard. And I want to break into technology. And so I decided, you know what? You either don't go, or what do? You call your girlfriends. So I called 4 girlfriends. I said, let's go to CES together and walk the floor. And if you know other women, invite them. 24 hours later, 50 women showed up to walk the floor. 2 remarkable things happened. 1, every guy's head turned. Like, where the heck did all you women come from? And it's when I coined the phrase, a woman alone has impact collectively. A woman alone has impact, but collectively, it's kind of a va-va-va-boom. It's power of the pack. And it was just this amazing moment. And the second was I was surrounded by people just like me. We talked about everything from the imposter syndrome to just doing deals. We were doing so much business, and then 50 women turned to 150, turned to 350, and the Girls Lounge was born. If there's a boys club now, there was a girls lounge. The opposite of boy is girl. The opposite of club is lounge. And next thing you knew, Girls Lounge started creating pop-ups at every industry conference. And originally women said, like, gosh, we're not girls, we're women. I said, first of all, ladies lounge sounds like a bathroom. Women's
sounds like the bathroom at Sears, Macy's. Yep.
And a women's lounge sounds so boring. And I said, and have you ever heard of a man object to being a boy in a boys club? Why are we objecting to, why are we creating these double standards? And then the Girls Lounge became 50,000 women strong across 100 countries. And we started doing 50 pop-ups at every industry conference, from CES to the NBA All-Star to NFL to the World Economic Forum. And then as women started supporting other women, we became the Equality Lounge, bringing men into the conversation. And it became a global phenomenon. And now the Equality Lounge is the power of collaboration. It's a place where all companies, Fortune 500 companies, come together to talk about how we're going to change the equation and close the gaps. And it's all over the world at pretty much any conference you go to. It's a safe space for all C-suite leaders to talk about how we're going to work together to create solutions for change and close the gaps.
And I love it. And we're talking April 2022, and there's been such positive strides, but we're not even close to that yet. What do you think is the best way forward to keep driving those numbers of women in leadership positions? How are we going to continue to break through and move up?
Well, I think there's a lot of solutions, but I think it's beyond conversation. It's action. It's action for change. And I think it's about conscious leadership. And I think the pandemic, while there's been a lot of challenges, I think it's opened up a lot of new opportunities. And we're now talking about caregiving solutions. We start 50-50, we end at less than 17%. And a lot of the challenges is in middle management, or what we call messy middle. And so we need more leadership. We need more women on boards, but we need more solutions for change. And a lot of the solutions are around caregiving. I think flexibility is going to be a big issue, hybrid schedules, but also not the elective. I think the solutions need to be solutions that become the new norm for everyone, not just for women. If we create the company for everyone that takes into account some of the things where we're making it, we need those solutions for women, then it becomes the bias barriers versus the opportunities that allow the solutions for everyone that work.
Right. You have to be careful there. It's a double-edged sword, right? You don't want to move backwards in certain areas by pushing certain initiatives. That's really interesting. And as a follow-up to that, I read in an article you once said, quote, once women hold at least 30% of executive positions, they'll hit critical mass and a cultural shift will occur. Are we on track for that?
We will be if we create some additional, in my opinion, I don't want to say the word mandatory, but if we create some new modern rules of the road,
best practices,
we will.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be practices that become the new modern norms inside the workplace. And we're about to create some new conscious CEO concepts that I think will go a long way to creating the changes that we need to see in the workplace.
I love it. Shelly, what keeps you up at night?
I don't really sleep very much because my brain thinks the best at about 3 a.m. But it's exciting.
Oh yeah, I got that same problem, Shelly.
I see them all as exciting opportunities right now. And I think with the new ways that we're thinking, especially with hybrid work, and I think everything is by design right now. I think we have such an amazing opportunity to design the workforce and the workplace of choice, and not making it the golf game, but making everything a new design. The world is going to change, and for the better, and give everyone, men and women, a whole new opportunity with freedom, that we can have a life that is a happy life that includes work and family, that everyone will be able to thrive with choices.
Amen.
That's going to work really well. I'm pretty excited about the opportunities that we have in front of us.
And amen. And Shelly, I mean, spot on. I mean, I think that's a huge silver lining of the pandemic, how it's helped accelerate a lot of positive change, a lot of thinking, a lot of forcing, in my opinion, organizations that were stuck in the past to have to move to the future, evolve, shift, listen, trust, or they're going to die. That's going to happen here. So Shelly, I want to bring it home here. I am a proud girl dad, as I was telling you before. I mean, even my company is NHP. These are my daughter's initials. I named my company after my daughter, and I do it because I want to set an example for her. 10 years old. She's super involved in my world. She's one of my favorite co-hosts that comes on my show. I do it a couple times a year with her because I want to lead by example, and I want to be a good ally, and I want to show her as example the right way that men and fathers and husbands and brothers should really help support the women out there. But what advice do you give to young women and young ladies that are entering the workforce to really empower them to speak up, stand out, break the rules, and not be scared of any repercussions?
Well, first of all, I think language matters a lot. And, one of the things I talk a lot about is it's not about having a male ally. It's about leadership allies. It's about partnership allies. And I think it starts with allyship at home. And so find a partner at home that shares the responsibility. So if you share the responsibility at home, you will have a successful career. And
Amen.
That's how it starts. So tell your daughters to find a great partner that will allow you to have a successful life. So successful partnership all around.
100%.
And I think that's what it's really all about. And that's what I have. And the same with my family. My kids really have grown up seeing that with my husband. We are partners. It's not a husband-wife relationship. We are partnership in life. And my kids have seen that strength, and that's how they are now as adults. And
lead by example there. Yeah.
Lead by example. I just want to say, even for CEOs today, you got to get rid of the junk in the trunk so that you can, today just close the door of inequity, open the new one of equality, and just breathe fresh air. Like we all keep
Exactly.
retrofitting. Just get rid of the concept of retrofitting. Like, don't retrofit. Just start today. Woo!
Exactly. Shelly, let's bring it home here. As I close out the show, I'd love to ask, what's the single greatest piece of advice you've ever received that you take action on every day?
Be you. Oscar Wilde says, be yourself because everyone else is taken.
One of my favorites. I love it and live it and love it. And Shelly, last but not least, you look back on your life and listen, it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows. There's been those tough times where you really had to dig down deep and, pull yourself up and harness that inner tenacity that you have in spades. And on the flip side of it, you sit here grateful, humble, and just proud of this world, this family, this movement, all this positive energy that you created. But Shelly, what keeps you focused? What keeps you going in life? What is your compass? Shelly Zalis, what is your North Star?
My family.
I love it. It's powerful. It's true. And I think that you've broken it down so eloquently on the right way to lead and to set example for all. And I want to thank you so much for your time, your generous time, and just keep fighting the good fight. I am thankful and grateful for you to spend time with me and my audience today. I want everyone to check out thefemalequotient.com. We're going to link it up in the show notes and everything. But Shelly, where else could folks find you? Where could they connect with you? Where could they learn more?
Shelly Zalis, Female Quotient, LinkedIn, any kind of social channels, Instagram,
Anywhere.
LinkedIn, Twitter, everywhere. You can find us.
Good
Our
stuff.
community is big and welcoming.
Awesome. Good stuff. Shelly, hang with me for one moment here as I sign off. And everyone listening, I really hope that you took a moment to learn, to listen, to laugh. And please check out thefemalequotient.com. You know where to find out more about the podcast and everything podcast at thepodcast.com. I appreciate your time. Remember, take care of each other, look out for one another, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.